All right, we'll let some people pop on. Let some people populate the Auburn Live Happy Hour show. Zach, if you're listening in the back, looks like Cole said he is available, so shoot him a link maybe in about 20 minutes, and we'll see if he can pop on, even if it's just audio. We'll get Cole Pinkston to join us. I think he's going to a high school game this week, but we'll get him to join us. We'll let people join in here for another minute or two as we are live from Session Cocktail in downtown Auburn for week number 3 of the Auburn Live Happy Hour show. A lot to talk about as Auburn gets ready for Oklahoma. Big week, big week. We're set up in a different place this week, so they are packed right now. If you're in downtown Auburn, I mean, there's still some booths. I mean, so if you've got a chance to come by, come by. But they're crowded. We've got a big crowd up front, an Auburn alumni event going on in the front corner where we normally are. So we're back in what's called the Tigers Den, which is a really cool kind of cubby sort of hideaway place in the very back that has a neon sign that says Tigers Den, and you can kind of see up here all the wallpapers like jungle and tigers. It's kind of this little cubby area. It's pretty sweet. So we're kind of back, tucked away a little bit. Coming to you live. We'll take as many questions as we can over the next hour. So if you're watching, you're listening, ask questions in YouTube. Zach will push them through. I will answer every single one as you come on. We're also going to be joined by Hunter Wiggins, who is the owner of Session Cocktail. He'll pop on and join us here in a few minutes just to kind of give everybody sort of a rundown of what Session is and kind of what they have to offer and all that good stuff. And we talk about him so much, but we want to sort of introduce you to Hunter and let him give a shout out to Session, and so you can kind of learn a little bit more about it. So he'll join us here in a few minutes as well. Man, another day of quarterback news. I'm sure everybody here has been at auburnlive.com and seen the story about Peyton Thorne starting. Not surprised. It's what we expected. It makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, he's played the most football. He's got the most experience, regardless of sort of your opinion on his on the field play. His football IQ and his knowledge and experience is obviously far and away more than Hank Brown's. It just is. And so I think against a defense like Oklahoma's, it makes some sense to start him. I think he does give you a better chance to win. You got to go do it. Again, pop in with any questions you can. We're live at Session Cocktail, downtown Auburn, Magnolia Avenue. And we'll start rolling through some questions, man. Hey, if people are watching, share the link, man. And if you're in Auburn, come in here and say, hey. If you're not, make this a thing. Every Friday, pop it on. If you're still at work, it's 4 o'clock on Friday. You're not working anyway. Or pop it on the audio and just listen to the show, man. We're live. It's kind of fun. Getting you ready for game day. Will's already jumping in here. Thoughts on the line movement? OU injury report related, obviously, but still surprising. Yeah, I think there's no question. I think the spread was 2.5 when we did the modcast on Thursday morning. I think it was 2.5. I don't know what it opened up at. I think it opened last Sunday at like 3.5. So you're talking about at least 4.5 to 5 points of movement since Sunday after the Arkansas game. Yeah, I think clearly OU injury related because they're already coming in with a freshman quarterback. Deion Burks is their best receiver. Now they lost maybe their second or third best receiver in the preseason. So he was already out. But Burks is the guy they got from the transfer portal. Auburn actually went after him a little bit. Really talented player, beast, freak athlete. And so I think when that came out that he was out, I think the odds makers are sitting there looking at Auburn looking at Oklahoma saying, okay, they've got a true freshman quarterback with very little experience, an offense that hasn't moved the ball very well, and then you take away their best player. It's hard to then it changed the outlook on what you think Oklahoma can do offensively. I mean, it's just they're now facing an uphill battle. And so it'll be interesting. Auburn's obviously got their turnover issues, and they've got to deal with some confidence issues, and they've got to regain their confidence as a group. Oklahoma, they probably have less identity than Auburn, if you want to be honest. Auburn has done some good things at times. I think Auburn right now internally is telling themselves, we're right there if we just protect the football. Whereas Oklahoma's offense, I think, is telling themselves, we don't really know what we are. I don't think they have a good idea of who they are at all. What's up, man? Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Love the AuburnLive.com members coming by. And so, yeah, I think Auburn's got like more of an identity. I think Oklahoma doesn't know who they are. Now, that could be a detriment to Auburn. We'll see. I mean, if Michael Hawkins comes in there and you don't know what Oklahoma is offensively, neither does Auburn's defense. So I think that those first couple of drives could be big for Auburn's defense to be somewhat prepared so they don't come out. Maybe Oklahoma comes out with some new stuff. Anyway, it'll be an interesting first couple of drives. NC Barron 1032. What do you expect the run pass ratio to be tomorrow on offense? It's a great question. It's a great question. I mean, look, this has been the debate now for 3 weeks, which is how does Hugh Freeze balance wanting to run the ball, but calling what the defense gives him, also attacking downfield, which he wants to do. You kind of can't do all those. I mean, if you want to run the ball, but the defense is predicating that you throw the ball, then Freeze is sort of in a dilemma. He either has to go against who he is in the design and the scheme of his offense, which is to read and react, and a lot of times in that RPO system, figure out what the defense is giving him, or he has to make the decision, hey, there's going to be some plays and situations in this game where regardless of what the defense is doing, outside of like a 9-man box, right? But if it's close, hey, let's just go ahead and give the ball. If it's 2nd and 2 and there's an 8-man box, you might go, okay, let's go one-on-one to Cam on the outside, which actually in that scenario wouldn't be bad. 2nd and 2, you could take a shot. But there might be some times where he says, let's go ahead and run the ball, even into a box that could be heavy, and pick up a first down or stay ahead of the chains. That's the balance that Freeze has got to figure out right now is, can he do a little bit of what he wants to do, be aggressive, attack where he thinks the defense is giving them plays, but then also understand down and distance and situation and maybe at times take what's there running the football, or maybe make a pass, take away a pass attachment, make something a little bit more simple. And so I think he's got to figure out a balance. I wrote at AuburnLive.com in my perspective and predictions piece, I wrote that there's got to be a better marriage between scheme, execution, and understanding. Like all of those things there has to be a better marriage between what you want to do, what you're trying to do, what they can actually execute, and that can't be what I think they can. You've got games under your belt now where you've got to figure out, okay, they have shown me what they can or can't execute. At some point, you can't come after games and keep saying, well, if they just wouldn't make this mistake. At some point, if there's enough mistakes happening, you have to chalk it up to, okay, there's something there that we need to stay away from. And then, like, what do they truly understand? There's got to be a much better marriage between all three of those things to provide a better game plan. And we'll see what happens on Saturday. Grayson Russell says thoughts on the depleted OU receiver room. Yeah, we were talking about that. I mean, Deion Burks being out, that's a big deal. I mean, he was their leading receiver. He wasn't having the year you thought he'd have because that whole offense has been a mess. I mean, he went there with the assumption that you're going to have this high-powered Oklahoma offense, which actually they were good last year with Dylan Gabriel. So he's thinking they're going to come in there. Jackson Arnold is this 5-star quarterback, and Deion Burks is going to light it up like so many OU receivers have in the past, and it's just been a mess. And so his production's, I think he's got a couple hundred yards receiving, something like that. So his production hasn't been there. But, yeah, you take him. You take one of their best receivers that was hurt in the preseason. But, yeah, going into this game, you look at their injury report, their best 5 receivers on their team will not play Saturday. Some of those are guys that have already been hurt. Some are just new, like Deion Burks. But no matter how you slice it, you go back to August and said, here's your 5 wideouts. Those 5 are not playing Saturday. So despite all the struggles for Auburn, I get all the struggles for Auburn, and I understand now it's flipped to them being a 1-point favorite. But golly, again, it's like a game where I understand the struggles Auburn's had, but you got to win this game. You got a true freshman coming in here with a team depleted at receiver that hasn't run the ball all that well, that's one of the worst teams in the country in third downs. No matter kind of what you're going through, if you let that team come in and beat you, even Arkansas's not as talented as Oklahoma, but they were but they at least had an identity. I mean, to me, Arkansas is more dangerous offensively because did they have the talent OU has? No, but they knew who they were and they were playing pretty good football on the offensive side. So it's just a game again where if you're Auburn, boy, you really don't think you can lose, or you shouldn't lose, in my opinion. Simply says, does Hank Brown go in tomorrow if Peyton looks awful? Well, it's a good question. So we talked about this last Friday. Hey, what does Hank Brown have to look like for Peyton Thorne potentially to go in? And we talked about, hey, if I said it wouldn't surprise me if Hank really, really struggles in the first half. It would not shock me if they go to Peyton quickly. And he did. First, comes out third quarter and goes into the game. I don't know, man, because you've now benched both of these guys for the other, right? So they've both been benched. The question is, what's awful? Like that's what you'd have to look at. What we saw last week was Auburn was still only down a touchdown at halftime, but Hank had thrown 3 picks. So I think it's a combination. If Peyton's not necessarily playing great, but it's 7-3. It sort of depends. Does Peyton have? Is it the offense that's not playing great, but it's not necessarily Peyton's fault? No, he's the guy. But I don't know, man. The Oklahoma. This game is different though than last week. The Oklahoma defense is far better than Arkansas's defense. So to me, if you're naming Peyton Thorne the starter, which Peyton will start, a huge reason is because of his experience and his ability, I think, to understand what Oklahoma's going to do. Peyton's seen it all. So even if Peyton's not playing great, if he's not playing awful, I think he stays in because how do you go away from? I think Peyton gives us the best chance to prepare, make adjustments at the line, and win. And then at halftime, if you don't think Hank's ready for the Oklahoma defense and the things they're going to do, he's not going to be ready at halftime. And so if you made a switch at halftime, let's say the offense wasn't playing well or Peyton wasn't playing well, that would be the ultimate sign of desperation because you've acknowledged pretty much by starting Peyton that Hank's not there in terms of his understanding. He thinks Peyton's better prepared against Oklahoma. And, boy, you don't want to get there. You don't want to get to that point. I actually think Peyton's going to play well. I think the offense is going to play fairly well. I think Peyton will play fairly well. Do you see Keandre Lambert-Smith being our first 1,000-yard receiver? Maybe. I mean, he's on pace to just edge over 1,000 yards, not by a lot. I think what you're going to see, though, is Cam Coleman right now is not playing great. He's been injured, but even with that, he's got 2 drops that have turned into interceptions. So he's responsible for 2 of Peyton's interceptions, straight up. And I'm going to tell you, there have been some other times on film that I've watched where he's not running great routes. There's times where I don't know if he just assumes the ball's going somewhere else, but he doesn't run 100% like on a route. It's kind of a I don't want to say loaf, but it's sort of a loaf to some degree. And so he's got to play a heck of a lot better. What you got? Oh, man, appreciate it. What's your name? Clyde? David? Yeah, so got some whiskey. Oh. All right, we should be back. No, we had David, man, an AuburnLive.com member just came and dropped off some whiskey. Zach, listen, man, I don't know, man. I might have to keep all this for myself now. What do we got here? Woo! Well, Clyde Mays. No, I'll share with the boys. How about that, man? Paying off. David coming through in the clutch with some Clyde Mays. Henry says, why is Walker White not an option? Well, Yeah, I mean, yeah, there are freshmen out there helping. I mean, I just don't think Walker's there. I think Walker is a good athlete, great guy. He's not there in terms of not only the understanding of what they want to do offensively, he's not there even, I think, from a developmental standpoint. Like, I think accuracy is still an issue with Walker. Um, I get it. People might want to see him. I believe that if you threw Walker White in there right now, I think it'd be a disaster. He's not ready. And you knew that. I mean, going back to early August, Freeze was pretty much already telling you he's going to redshirt. I mean, it wasn't even really a conversation. I mean, so I think that says a lot about what he thinks about, where Walker's at. Not necessarily where he could be, but where he's at now. Again, people are asking Walker White. I don't see it. I don't see it. I think he's not there. The other thing is he's been playing scout team. So even if you wanted to prepare him, he hasn't been running Auburn's offense for a month. He's been running the other team's offense against Auburn's defense. So he hasn't even been taking reps within what Auburn does offensively. He's been preparing Auburn's defense. So you talk about a guy that would really be kind of out of the loop. It's really just not an option. I mean, it'll be Peyton and Hank for the rest of the year. Holden won't even get in unless somebody potentially is injured. I think it'll be Peyton's show the rest of the year unless he starts to play very, very poorly again. And I could see him bouncing back to Hank. Like, I could see that happening, but I think it'll pretty much be Peyton and Hank the rest of the way. James asks, any chance you think we'll see Keontae Scott return to the slot? Yeah, that's interesting, man, because Keontae moved to the slot for the Arkansas game. Champ moved outside. Champ had the first 12 plays of the game, Champ had 3 pass breakups in the first 12 plays, and he had a quarterback pressure in the first 12 plays. He was off to a phenomenal start, and he's such a good kid, and I hate that he got injured. But yeah, I kind of think, well, it'll be interesting. I think it depends on 2 things. Did you move Keontae to the slot because you just firmly believe he's not built for the outside? Or did you think, well, Champ's playing so well that we need to give Champ a shot? The reason I say that is because I think the question now, potentially would become, do we insert Jay Crawford in there? Do you believe enough in true freshman Jay Crawford to put him on the outside and keep Keontae in the nickel? Or are you not sure about Jay Crawford? Does that make you nervous? And so you go to Keontae on the outside just as a safety valve and let, somebody else has obviously got to pick up the slack at nickel. Maybe Sylvester Smith moves down, whatever. So I think it depends. Kind of depends on maybe their belief in Jay Crawford, maybe J.C. Hart, but Jay Crawford's made some plays. So I could see Jay Crawford starting on the outside and keeping Keontae in the nickel. We'll see. I think if Keontae moves back to the outside, it's probably more an indictment on they're just not sure yet if they want to turn Jay Crawford loose and let him go play the outside in big-time SEC football. I think it would probably say more of that. And if Keontae stays in the nickel, then I think it would speak to we think Jay Crawford or J.C. Hart is ready. But I kind of lean Crawford, man. He's made some plays. Hugh Freeze has mentioned him a few times. That's kind of where I would go, even though I love the thought of J.C. Hart. Thoughts on the new basketball committee? Yeah, good players. Simon Walker, 6'5", shooting guard. Listen, 6'5" shooting guard, those are tough to turn down anyway. You're talking about a legit guy that can come off the ball, create his own shot, tons of range at 6'5". That's good stuff. So I wouldn't pay a ton of attention to Virginia Tech and Iowa is kind of where he came down to. He's one of the best players in the state. Go watch his film against Monteverde Academy, the number 1 team in the country last year. He gets 16 points, 7 rebounds, something like that. Simon Walker's a good player. So, and he can really shoot. So I think it's one of those in-state, loves Auburn, fantastic shooter, can really fill a specific role, take him early on and build. Look, it's going to be a big class one way or another, either high school or portal stuff. It's going to be a big class. Oh, nice. Thanks, man. Colby says, do you think Perry redshirts? Interesting question. And I haven't addressed this on the board. Interesting question. I say no. at this point, I say no. We'll find out today, right? He's played 4 games. So if he's going to redshirt, he's got to shut it down. I've been told that Auburn toyed with the idea of redshirting Perry, but Perry's not in favor of that and wants to keep playing. And so it's one of those things where, I don't know if it's this day and age or if the same thing would happen 10 years ago, but certainly in the era of the transfer portal, you gotta play the game a little bit. And so if a player says, "Hey, I don't want a redshirt, I want to play," and if you were to say, "Too bad, we're redshirting you," boy, you really up the chance of upsetting that player and having him enter the portal. And Perry's a phenomenal athlete, and I think he's got a good ceiling because he's such a good athlete. He's just raw. I think you run a real big risk if you said, "Too bad, you're redshirting. That's our decision." You really run a risk of upsetting that relationship, and he enters the portal. You don't want to go that direction. Let him keep playing if that's what he wants to do. Try to fit him in. I actually think he did some good things blocking at times. He's a physical guy. He's not really a threat in the passing game. He didn't understand the offense yet, but he's a pretty good blocker. So at this point, I think he still plays, even though I think Auburn would love to redshirt him. Henry says, "Can you answer honestly?" Oh boy, let me take a sip of water before I do this one. Is Hugh too arrogant to ever just go get a quarterback because he thinks he can make anyone just fit? It's a loaded question, man. I think that arrogance is a strong word. Do I think Hugh is supremely confident? Yes. In his offense, in what he thinks he's drawing up, in himself. Yes. Like, he could be arrogant. I don't want to say that in too much of a negative fashion because I think to some degree, good players have to be arrogant. Good coaches have to be arrogant to some degree. Like, maybe you should say they want to be supremely confident. Arrogant might sort of relay a confidence that's so confident that you're just disregarding the reality. I don't know that he's that. Maybe a little bit at times. So that's a tough one. So I definitely think he is confident in what he can scheme up. I think he's confident in his abilities to develop a good offense. Go back to that question real quick. But when it comes to landing a quarterback, when you say to go get a quarterback, that brings in a different discussion if you're talking about the portal, because we've talked about the past. That's a whole different discussion when you're talking about how he feels about entitlement, how he feels uncomfortable in the NIL era, the portal era, because he doesn't want players coming in entitled, especially at quarterback, because he's got to coach that guy. So, like, there's that whole element of it, and there's the element of Hugh feels like his stuff's good enough. So, a little bit of arrogance on his part, little bit of confidence on his part, a little bit of being reluctant in the NIL portal era to go pay a quarterback $1.5 million. But I do think he committed to Peyton Thorne and Hank Brown, and I do think he said, unless I can get what he considered, he thought Riley Leonard would be a great fit. Late in the game, they went after Cam Ward. Past that, they didn't really go after anybody. And so that's what he's going to have to figure out. It's a combination of things. But he believed in Peyton Thorne and Hank Brown, and there might have been a little bit of arrogance on his part to say, you know what? These people are telling me that I can't win with Peyton Thorne. I think Peyton Thorne's a good quarterback, and I think my schemes are good, and I'm going to show these people that I made the right decision. There could be some of that. That obviously we talk about pride comes before the fall. Right now, that looks like it doesn't look like a great decision because the offense isn't clicking. So, in general, if you got a little confidence, a little arrogance, could that hinder him in decision making? I would say yes. Do you think the offense is subdued? What you got, Hunter? Do you think the offense is subdued against Oklahoma, or do you think Hugh still thinks? Oh boy. if you've listened to everything Hughes said, he firmly believes that it is not the scheme and it is not his play call that's the problem. He firmly believes that. And when you hear him in the media talk about and really, I think, place more of the blame on the players, he has said we need to coach better. He says that, but he quickly moves past that and he dwells on the player execution. I think that's, by the way, a big disconnect when people have talked about Hugh blaming players or Hugh saying they need to coach better. My stance after listening to everything Hugh says, he does say we need to coach better, but he quickly moves past that statement and he will dwell on players need to play better, players need to execute better. I need guys that won't throw interceptions. I need safeties and so that's why I think he does lean a little bit towards putting it on the players, especially offensively. He feels like the stuff he's dialing up is good. So I still think he's going to try to do his thing against Oklahoma and play the way he's comfortable playing and attack the way he's comfortable attacking. I do think Oklahoma's defense does call for a little bit more in the run game. And that's another element of maybe why Peyton Thorne gets to start. He does bring an element to the run game that you may need against Oklahoma. Holding on to the ball, some design quarterback runs. I think Peyton can help in this game with his running ability, because I think you're going to have to run the ball against this Oklahoma team and move the chains, obviously. And so I think he'll still continue to run his stuff. Maybe you see a few more first down runs. Maybe you see a few more runs on 2nd and 1, 2nd and 2, instead of taking shots, things like that. But I think he still thinks that his stuff is going to work and his schemes are going to work. I don't think he's going to vary yet about his overall approach. I mean, he's confident in what he's drawing up, and he thinks it's there. I mean, he said after the Arkansas game, guys are running open, and so he feels very good about that stuff. But again, I talked about it at auburnlive.com, and I'll answer this question next. I talked about it in the piece yesterday. At some point, it doesn't matter how well the scheme is, how good the scheme is. It doesn't matter how well designed the plays are. If they can't execute it consistently, you have to adjust. At some point, you have to say, okay, maybe it is true that guys are running wide open. Maybe it is true that I'm dialing up awesome plays, but for whatever reason, consistently, execution isn't happening. So I have to adjust somehow. I have to adjust. I have to swallow my pride and go, okay, I got to do something differently. I can't call that play anymore. I can't ask them to do X, Y, or Z anymore. Even if I think the plays are there, they're having trouble executing it. I just can't continue to call it. Like at some point, you have to realize that. But I will say, it's not easy to if you're Freeze. He's also Auburn doesn't even have a clean game to assess. You've played two good teams. You want to pop on a second? He's had two big. Okay, yeah. What? Yeah. He's had two games against decent teams, and they haven't gone well. So to Hughes' kind of defense, he would probably love to see one clean game against a decent opponent, and then maybe go, okay, are we or are we not capable of executing? Forget the turnovers. Let's say we have no turnovers, but we still are making other mistakes that are limiting first downs. He doesn't even have that to really judge off of. So I think he's just sort of still like not completely sure of what his team is capable of in a lot of ways. Hunter Wiggins is going to join us here in a second, by the way, and give us a little shout out to Session. And Zach, you can just tell me in the chat if we ever get Cole on. You can just tell me. We can go to him in a few minutes. Or says, what is the vibe among leadership in athletics department? Staff boosters, I would say administration, no issues. I mean, I think there's still full support of Hugh Freeze. I think boosters the same. I don't think there's any panic or any issues at the moment. But every week it's going to change. If you lose to Oklahoma, the dynamic could change. You lose to Georgia, and then you lose to Missouri. Like, tell me again in 3 weeks, and the dynamic of that changes. And so it's a question that I think literally will change every week or whatever. And so right now, I think everybody's still aligned. up and down, administration, boosters, collective. It's all still there. But every loss changes the dynamic. Every loss resets the board and just resets everything. Because then people go, uh-oh, it's a new variable that's inserted into the mix that we didn't have before. And so that's why it's a tough question to ask. Right now, I think there's no issues. But if they turn around and lose to Oklahoma, Georgia, Missouri, Kentucky, then you go talk to boosters, then it could be very different. All right, Hunter, we're going to bring Hunter Wiggins on real quick. Hunter's the owner of Session Cocktail. Here we are in the Tigers Den. All right, give people the lay of the land, what Session is, and what you guys do. We appreciate you having us.
Yeah, no, appreciate you being here, Justin. So we're a cocktail bar in downtown Auburn that specializes in classic and modern classic cocktails. So what we've tried to do to set ourselves apart is put an emphasis on making clean, crisp drinks with fresh ingredients and providing a service piece that is the service you guys deserve as a customer. It's been great with the cocktail boom that happened in the early 2000s. We've been able to realize that in these college markets like Auburn, Alabama, there's a need for and a want for people to go drink great drinks and a great atmosphere with proper table service.
Well, we love it. We got fans over here. I come here all the time. Obviously, appreciate your partnership with the show. Tell me, so I got a Gold Rush here, which I've told people is it's probably my favorite drink. There's another one called Monkey Business that I'm kicking on right now, but I love this one. It's a bourbon drink. Will you tell people what this is? Because I think this is my go-to.
Yep. So a Gold Rush is a modern classic cocktail made with bourbon, honey syrup, and lemon, and it was made popular at a bar in New York City, and it's just been widespread across the country, and should be able to get at any cocktail bar that calls themselves a cocktail bar in the country. It's one of our favorite drinks. It's simple. It's clean. It's one of those cocktails that's greater than the sum of its parts. It's 3 ingredients, but man, it just kicks ass.
It's good. It's never bad. I'll say that. It's always a go-to. All right. So for people coming in town, or for our members that have never been here, they pop in. It's not the deal where you got college kids standing around. It's a good environment, bar seating, booth seating. What are some of the things you do throughout the week, or people that come in town on the weekend? What are maybe some good times, things they can look out for, ways to? How do you do a session? How do you experience sessions?
So obviously we happy hours are bread and butter. I mean, you can't see the crowd right now, but we don't have a empty seat in the house right now. When you come in town, 4 to 7, Monday through Saturday. We try to be the pre-dinner and the post-dinner spot, whether it's a Monday or Tuesday or a Friday night. We want to be the place where when you have friends, Steve, how you doing today? When you have friends in town or family and you want to take them out and go celebrate, that's what we want to put emphasis on, is what the experience you create with the people that. And it's a place where you create memories, and we can provide a space and post and provide a service piece that allows you to have a great time with your friends, your families, and the people that you care about.
We appreciate you having us, man.
You're welcome, man. And we're open on Sundays from 12 to 5 for a big post-drink cocktail after a big win. And we'll be here Monday through Sunday for many years to come.
All right, Auburn, Oklahoma quick thoughts, predictions.
I think that what are we going to get out of Peyton? If we can keep the turnovers down and with the home field advantage, I don't think that Oklahoma has the offense to score the points they need to run away with this thing. So Jordan Hare has to be in the game. Oklahoma's defense is real, and I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game. And I really do. I think 21's the number. If you get to 21, I think you win the ball game.
I agree. I think my prediction was 21-17. I think is where I was at, so I agree. I had a stat in our notes that Auburn under freeze. Auburn is, I think, now 1-8. You out?
No, I thought I was done.
Auburn is, I think, 1-8 when they allow 20 or more points under freeze so far. So if they give up 20, they pretty much lost everything. If they don't get to 20, it's just not happening.
So who's starting for Oklahoma? Is Jackson Arnold, or is it freshman?
So Michael Hawkins, the true freshman, and they're down. Deion Burks, their best receiver, out. So if you go back to August and you were to say their 5 best receivers are all not available for whether they were out preseason or whatever. So yeah, it's a game where, I mean, if you can't beat a true freshman quarterback at home, I don't care if Oklahoma's even good. True freshman quarterback, all the receivers, they're not running the ball well. They have no identity on offense.
Yeah.
It's a game where even Auburn has their struggles and has had their issues. You got to overcome those and win at home.
Yeah.
You have to.
You have to. And this is a must win. I think for morale, for the fan base, for the team, you got to come away with the W because it doesn't get easier after this. And a loss here really, hopefully it won't have the snowball effect. But I agree with you. If you're down those receivers and you start playing a true freshman quarterback, if you give up 24 points, it's a long season ahead.
I agree. All right, dude.
Hey, man. Always appreciate having you.
Yeah.
Guys, look forward to seeing y'all. Ask for me. We'll be here.
There you go. Appreciate you, man. Session Cocktail. Come to have a good time. We'll keep. We got Cole, Zach. Is Cole around? Not yet. Okay. No worries. No worries at all. We'll be here for another 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so. Hunter says over under 24.5 passing attempts. Oh boy. Well, you go back and look at like Georgia and Alabama last year, two good defenses, and how Auburn tried to game plan that. I think they were well under both those. I don't say well under, but I think they were under those. I mean, if you're Hugh, you'd love to be under. You'd love to be under. I think Peyton threw 22 passes in the second half against Arkansas alone. That's not where you want to be. You don't want to be 30. You don't want to be 30 passes. So, oh boy, I'm gonna say over. But here's the other kicker. If Auburn cannot turn it over, what can they get their play count to? They haven't really come close to even hitting 70 plays this year. Part of that's Alabama, A&M, and New Mexico were terrible, and so Auburn had a bunch of big plays and scored quickly. But in the two games that mattered, Cal and Arkansas didn't even really sniff 70 plays because of the turnovers. So what does an Auburn offense look like if they cannot turn it over and get to 70 plays? Because there's been flashes of production. There's been flashes of big plays. There've been flashes of good runs. But if they get, my point is, if they get to 70 plays and Peyton throws the ball even 30 times, you got 40 other runs. I mean, I think that's exactly, I think he would love to be there. Get the 70 plays, don't turn it over. Tell me that Peyton threw the ball 28 times and tell me we ran the ball 42 times. I think he'd love to be right there. So part of that passing attempt sort of depends on if they can hold on to the ball and get their play count up. Justin says, does Hank transfer? Oh, man, too early. I mean, too early to know. If Peyton gets his second chance and plays really well and the rest of his team plays really well, that's the thing. I'm going to keep harping on that because I think it's fair. I don't care if people want to hear it or not. Peyton needs to play better. But I could absolutely make the argument that 5 of Peyton's 5 picks, I could absolutely 3 of them aren't his fault. 2 drops, 1 bad route. I could talk about the 4th one where he's told to throw to Cam Coleman one-on-one. That back shoulder throw where Cam was hurt, got picked in the Cal game. Peyton's coached to throw that ball. Now you could say, does he need to override his coaching there and go to another receiver? You could make the argument, but when you're hammered and coached to do something, you do it. And he wasn't told Cam was hurt. Hard to fault him on the decision. And then his 5th pick, his arm was hit. Now, again, you could argue he held the ball too long. But even then, once your arm's hit, you don't know. Maybe he held the ball a little too long, but it could have still been a completion. We don't know. So, I just think it's important to keep that in context that Peyton needs to play better. He needs to get rid of the ball. There's some times where there's some receivers open and he doesn't pull the trigger. But, man, all those picks are not – it's not as easy as saying Peyton's throwing 5 picks. That's really not the whole story. But to your point, if Peyton comes in and plays well and is kind of the guy the rest of the year, I don't think Hank transfers because Peyton's gone. Hank will have his opportunity. If Peyton comes in and is the guy the rest of the year, I don't think that means that Hugh Freeze doesn't think Hank Brown has potential. I just think it means Hank was thrown into the fire. It didn't go well. They went back to the experienced player. And at that point, you'd give credit to Peyton Thorne for taking the reins and playing well. But you'd come back and Hank would have a great shot. To me, he would have an advantage over Walker because he's played. He'd have an advantage over a freshman quarterback. And it would probably be Hank versus a portal quarterback. That would probably be the main competition. Then can Walker White break in? No, I don't think Hank will leave. I mean, he signed with Hugh Freeze. He says he's a believer in Hugh Freeze. And so I think he'd stay and take his shot. I mean, he'd still have a great chance to develop and be the starter next year. How many sacks do we need to win tomorrow? Man, I don't think it's as much sacks as it's just third down conversions. I mean, Auburn's defense against Arkansas played really well. They had 3 sacks, I think 6 or 7 quarterback hurries, pressures, 7 tackles for loss. Like they made some plays, but they give up 9 third down conversions. They give up 5 third down conversions of 3rd and 10 or more. That's what can't happen. I don't know how many times you're going to sack Michael Hawkins. He's a phenomenal athlete. So I don't know how many times you're going to sack him. I think it's just about getting off the field. That's the Achilles heel of this Auburn defense so far, is getting off the field. A couple of busted assignments, a couple of big plays allowed. They have given up some big plays, but not a ton. It's been way more about getting off the field, not committing that one late hit penalty, not committing a pass interference penalty on third down. That stuff can't happen. So third down defense, if that can become a more disciplined operation, this Auburn defense is a good unit. They're not great. They're a good unit, and they're good enough to win football games if they can play more discipline on third down. If they can't, it doesn't matter. It's kind of like the offense. It doesn't matter what you rush for. It doesn't matter about all the big plays. If you're turning it over, none of that matters. Defensively, you can get a sack, you can get a tackle for loss. None of that matters if you turn it on 3rd and 8 and you give up a conversion. It erases all the good you do. So like both sides of the ball have just one glaring Achilles heel that erases everything else they do well. So I point more towards, specifically in this game against an athletic guy, it won't be about sacks. What have you learned against Cal, New Mexico, and Arkansas, who all had mobile to athletic quarterbacks that could get out of the pocket? What have you learned? How can you then play this guy? I think we're going to know that. Over under 2.5 sacks. I'll say over. We just talked about sacks, and I'm not saying it's the determining factor in the game, but I do think while Michael Hawkins is athletic, they have not run the ball well. So I do think that they're going to try to make some plays at the passing game. What you can hope is he tries to scramble. Maybe he tries to scramble too much, and maybe he runs himself into a sack or two. Where, yes, he's athletic, but maybe he tries to be Michael Vick or tries to be a superhero out there, and Auburn gets a sack that way. So I think it's possible that you could go over that. As athletic as he is, maybe he tries to do too much at times, and you can have good coverage and sack him. So I think it's possible they could go over and hit that 3 number, because this guy could try to make too much of a situation. We'll see. Would you move Alston to running back 3 to defend? Oh, boy. No, I wouldn't, because I still think Damari is their best pass blocker. I still think Damari is their best pass catcher. And so, look, Jarquez has fumbled too. And so, no, I'm not ready to move him yet. Jeremiah Cobb is good, but I still would trust Damari in picking up a blitz. I still would trust Damari running a route. And so, yeah, kind of like Keontae and punts, there might be a breaking point. I don't think you're there yet. Because you got to weigh that against, if I play Jeremiah and he's not as comfortable picking up blitzes and he's not as comfortable running routes, what am I giving up there? There's something to weigh there if Damari can just really, really focus on keeping his elbow in. So I wouldn't move him yet. I love Damari. I love him so much. He's a great guy. He's a really good player. I just hate that he has those fumbles. We got Cole on.
Hey, what's up? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you, man. I got you. Let me tweet that you're on real quick. See if we can get one little last kick of people on the show. Hey, I had I've had a bunch of members are here. Have come over and said hey. And I don't know if you can see. Can you see me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody dropped a bunch of these.
Oh yeah.
I got like 4 or 5 of these packs from a David. Big fan of Auburn Live. Comes with and brings some Clyde Mays. So I'm like, hello. That's why I'm doing the show. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah. Let me
I
get
told
one
Zach
of those.
I'll maybe give you one. Won't tell Jeffrey. I'm just kidding. What do you think, man? Where you at? So obviously we reported Peyton Thorne starting. That was the expectation. We all said we thought that's where Freeze would go. You thought you would start Hank, but we all agreed we thought Hugh would start Peyton. And then you toss in Deion Burks being out for Oklahoma. You're the one guy that picked Oklahoma. We all picked really close, right there in the same score. I mean, we were all very similar in how we thought in general the game would go. You're kind of giving Oklahoma the benefit of the doubt. Do you think differently now that Burks is out, or are you sticking with your pick?
No, I'm gonna stay with it. I mean, I picked Hank in my article that I wrote, but I don't know if I made a good point of this, but I don't think that there was a bad choice to be made here. I think either Peyton or Hank was a good choice. I'm fine with either. Like I don't think because I picked Hank Brown, just because he picked Peyton, I don't think it's detrimental by any means. I think Peyton can win games. He did it last year with a more simplified offense. You open up the offense, and then he had some issues. But man, I think that there are ways to move this process along a little faster with Thorne at quarterback. And I think they can do that, but I don't have the most confidence in this game. I still don't like where the offense is at this point right now.
You friends with Hope? Are you out? All right, see ya.
We're going to graduate.
Okay.
Let me know if you go there.
All right. No, I agree with you. Sorry, we got fans, Cole.
I gotta come join you over there one day.
Yeah, so we're in the back. We're in the Tigers Den. This really cool. If you ever come back here and have a few people and you sort of want to be out away from the madness, they have a really cool little spot that's tucked in the back. That's where we are today. There's a huge alumni event going on. Do what?
There's gonna be one Friday that I take off from going to games. I thought it was gonna be this one, but it's cleared up really nicely. The weather, it's a little windy, but it's nice. It's a nice day, and I figured I'd ride on down to Elba, Alabama, and check out Alvin Henderson in person. He is actually one of the few guys that I have not seen in person yet, which is crazy.
Huh. Yeah, he's kind of a man amongst boys out there. Yeah, I think what you said makes a lot of sense. We've had a lot of questions about obviously Thorne and Hank Brown and sort of what's going to happen there. I'm hopeful that Peyton builds on a good second half against Arkansas. I am. I don't think we know what the game plan and the attack is going to look like. We've had a lot of questions about attack and game plan and what that's going to look like in terms of, will Hugh Freeze dial it back at all? Will he change anything? I'm kind of I'll believe it when I see it, because I think Hugh is just who he is. And if he thinks that there's a play there to be had, if he thinks the defense is playing a certain way, he's going to dial it up and he's going to say, you guys should execute it. It's not in his nature to say, man, I think there's a play to be had there, but I'm not sure we can execute it, so let's just run the ball. I'm not sure he's there yet. Maybe he needs a game to do that, and maybe it produces a little bit, and he goes, okay, that might work too. But I wrote, and you tell me what you think. I wrote yesterday and kind of my thoughts and opinions and stuff, and I put it this way. There has to be a better marriage between scheme, execution, and understanding of what to do. Like, all of those things have to come together in a way better marriage than what we're seeing now. Like, there's got to be a give and take to me with all of that. Of what do I think we can do? What should we be doing? What can my guys actually execute? What do they actually understand? Take all of it and build a game plan. And I think to this point, Hugh's been like, this is our scheme. I'm calling it. You just need to do it. And there hasn't, you know what I mean? It's been pretty much, I'm calling it. I don't even know if you can execute or not, but I'm expecting you to. And maybe there needs to just be a little bit more understanding of and compromise of Hugh maybe has to go, okay, we can't do this play very well. We're not executing it consistently enough. So I love the play scheme, but I'm not sure I can call that anymore. You know, that type of thinking.
The point you just made is something I was just about to say. I think there's something interesting to this Hugh Freeze record of how he usually shows up pretty well on offense in big games, and then there's games that he drops, like New Mexico State, and I think when he thinks that they got an advantage, he opens up the offense more and tries things that he knows could work, but may not be like super. Like, I feel great about this play. I know if this play works, we can open up the game and blow this team out, but I just don't know if it's, you know what I mean? Like, when he gets in a game that he feels like it's a little bit overmatched, like maybe this game, he looks at Oklahoma's defense, is like, okay, they're really good. We got to make sure we do the things we're good at. I think he understands that. I think he does that in these kind of games. That's why they were in the Alabama game last year. It's why they were in the Georgia game. Because they played good enough defense to be in those games. And I think their defense is good enough to be in any game on the schedule right now. I do. Maybe not deep enough, but good enough. So I think he will simplify the game plan just a touch, pull back a little bit and say, all right, here's the things that we're good at. We're going to do it this way. Because I do actually think that's part of his MO and not so much just forcing a square peg into a round hole. Because I think that explains why he's been able to be close in games he was outmatched in.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm eager to see sort of what they look like. What did you make of another Cole Kubelik on a video, and I retweeted it because Cole Kubelik, obviously former Auburn center, came out and he said exactly what I've tried to be preaching to the corner for 3 weeks, which is, yes, the quarterbacks need to play better. Absolutely. And not but, and there's a bunch of other guys that need to play better too. And there have been mistakes in perimeter blocking. I saw Anthony Schwartz, former Auburn player, retweet that and say, that's not happening. Let me just tell you, Anthony, yes, it is. There have absolutely been breakdowns on perimeter blocking. There have absolutely been breakdowns in pass protection. There have been breakdowns in running backs picking up. All it takes is 1 or 2 times for a running back to mess up on a blitz pickup, and the drive's done. Those plays are critical. One time, sack, boom, that drive's gone. There have been that. There have been, obviously, we've seen drops. There have been wrong routes. Yes, the quarterbacks need to play better, but Cole Kubelik is exactly right, and I've been saying the same thing on the corner. People just maybe don't want to hear it, or they just want to blame a quarterback, and they don't really want to take a step back and try to be really fair. But there are a bunch of other issues happening. I hope quarterback play improves. That would be the most impactful. If the quarterbacks can make a few better decisions, hugely impactful. But you also need Percy Lewis to play better. You need Rivaldo Fairweather to play better. You need the guys on the perimeter to block the right person and not run by a corner who then goes and makes the tackle for no gain. You need a running back to not miss a blitz on what would have been a big play, but because he gets sacked, nothing happens. Like, there's guys that need to pick up their play in addition to the quarterbacks. And I just think it's fair to say that. We've talked about Peyton Thorne and Hank Brown ad nauseum, right? Their name has been mentioned by everybody and talked about, over and over and over again. And if we're being fair, then we also need to say the name of Percy Lewis, and we also need to say the name of Rivaldo Fairweather, and we also need to say the name of Cam Coleman. You can't drop balls that turn into interceptions. You can't loaf a route. Like, there's other guys that their name needs to be said the same way we say Peyton and Hank. That's just being fair. So I hope it all sort of comes together, and maybe if everybody clicks and you've got confidence, everybody will feed off that. But there's a lot of things that come together. I mean, I think that's a very fair outlook. Do you not see it the same way? Did you watch what Cole Kubelik had to say? Do you think he was right?
I mean, yeah, he's right. Justin, I don't know if you're a runner. I know you exercise or whatever, but if you've ever been like a runner and you're in the middle of a run, and sometimes even though you don't want to stop your momentum, you need to walk every once in a while to catch yourself up. I think sometimes teams like this, you do all your fundamentals, you do all that stuff in the off season, preseason, fall camp, and all that. But sometimes you get into the season and you realize that maybe you didn't spend enough time on that stuff. maybe you just didn't get good enough at it to take on some of these teams that are really good at it. So at practice, you have to stop and go, all right, we got to walk before we can run here. We got to get these fundamentals down. It's almost would benefit this team if they took like an hour out of a practice and said, we're going to refine our fundamentals today. That's what we're doing today, fellas. I think there's just, if you clean up some of those little small things like Rivaldo Fairweather trying to square up a guy instead of trying to go get him on a block and it's slowing the play down, or, holding the football, working on that for an hour, that kind of stuff, and really getting down into the basics and details of it, I think this football team would be leaps and bounds better. Because I saw missed assignments. You're talking about missed assignments from the New Mexico game to the Arkansas game. I count missed assignments when I do the play script. They were like 5 to 10 less missed assignments in that game, so they fixed that part. But it's the basics before that they're struggling. If they could ever get that right, they're going to be okay. I mean, but it's a weird place to find yourself because you're at a point in the season now where it's like, can we afford to stop things and slow things down and get back to the basics without working on repetition on our offense and getting better at that? It's a weird place, but it's something that needs to happen for sure.
No doubt. All right, so you're going to Elba. We're about to wrap up here in just a few minutes, but so you're going to watch Alvin Henderson. You'll have reports on Alvin tonight, tomorrow morning, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and, I can definitely go ahead and tell you that my reports on Alvin are going to be that he scored a lot of touchdowns, he had a lot of carries, and he's going to have a lot of yards. And he's probably going to go over 1,000 tonight, if I had to guess, for the season in a span of 6 games. So you want to do that average in your head. But as we always do, if you're not on the corner, come try it because, man, I throw halftime nuggets out on my Friday night games. Halftime recruiting nuggets. Come check them out.
Yep, it'll be another important recruiting weekend in Auburn. Obviously, Deuce Knight is expected to be on campus, maybe Naheem Alford, and so a couple of important visitors. I said on Twitter, I retweeted Jeffrey's hot board, and I said quarterback recruiting at this point has got enough twists and turns to be its own Netflix special. And so I don't think we're done there yet. So another big recruiting weekend.
Yeah, boy, I've enjoyed covering that one. Not.
NIL makes everything great. I mean, recruiting is always crazy forever. It's always been crazy. NIL just heightens it up by 10 because things can change at the drop of a hat, and it becomes more complicated to have a really, really good grasp of what's going on. Not saying everything's NIL, but it just adds an element that makes predicting damn near impossible.
For what we do, you have to make predictions. You got to make bets on this stuff and kind of put yourself out there and make a stand on things sometimes as a recruiting reporter. And, man, it's just it's a great way to get burned because you don't know. It's not that the kids are lying to you or people around them are lying to you. They just don't. They plain straight up don't know what's going on, just like you do. They have not made a decision sometimes, and it's like even if they do, the next day their mind completely changes, and there's nothing you can do about that.
Well, go have fun. Go have fun covering Alvin Henderson. I'll see you tomorrow in the press box, Auburn, Oklahoma, 2:30 ABC.
Looking forward to it. I'm fired up.
Fired up? All right. See you, Cole.
See you.
All right, a couple more minutes. If you got any last minute questions, pop them in there. Thanks for Cole. Thanks to Cole for joining us. We'll go another couple of minutes, and if there's any last questions, shoot them. I'll answer as many as I can. I'm good right now. I can stay another few minutes. Hunter says, how bad does Peyton have to play to pull him? Yeah, somebody asked this earlier. Or do they ride him until the bye week? Man, it's hard to tell. I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't know. I mean, what would be the what's up? We're talking live. How are y'all? Huh? Are y'all here? Are y'all hanging?
Get to a break.
All right. Yeah, I'm not sure, man. I think it depends on how bad, and it depends on if it's all Peyton's fault. The Hank was tough because 2 of those 3 picks were on Hank. I mean, there was he didn't read zone. and they just bad throw against Sam. It's kind of on him. And so it sort of depends. If they're struggling on offense, but you look at it and you go, God, it's actually not Peyton, really. There's some other things that he sticks in there. But against Oklahoma, you might ride it out unless it's just a complete and utter disaster. Master, for you and Cole, would you rather have a coach that has a great reputation on connecting on Hail Marys or someone that builds a team that has an identity and stays on schedule? Well, yeah, you want an identity, right? You want that. I guess you're sort of insinuating that you think Hugh maybe is sort of feast or famine, and there's not a lot of consistency maybe in who he is offensively. It's sort of what I read into your question. That's my biggest question. That's my biggest question in this whole debate. When I hear people say, if Auburn can just not turn it over, if Auburn would just not, and Hughes said it and all that good stuff, but the history says that's easier said than done, because Hughes teams have turned the ball over a lot at Ole Miss and a lot at Liberty. So I don't know how realistic it is to ask that. I don't know. We haven't even seen an Auburn team play consistent enough football to say that stuff. So my biggest question is not, yeah, we know if they don't turn it over, they'd look good, but can they actually do it? I don't know. Anybody recruits visiting this weekend? Yeah, Deuce Knight. Naheem Alford probably be here. You got some big basketball visitors. Deuce is the biggest one. Deuce Knight on his official visit is the biggest one. So we'll see how that goes. All right, let's roll out of here, Zach. We did an hour. Appreciate everybody joining us. If you are in town, I guess this is the last home game. We'll still do these on away games. So check in next Friday, 4 to 5 before the Georgia weekend. Another big one. We'll see how Saturday goes. Hope to see everybody at Jordan-Hare Stadium. If not, go to auburnlive.com and subscribe. We appreciate everybody for joining us.